The A4Q AI portfolio brings together 3 certifications, each designed to strengthen your understanding of AI from a different perspective. You can start with A4Q AI Essentials to gain a clear understanding of how AI works and how to apply it ethically and effectively. Explore A4Q AI Foundation to deepen your knowledge of AI methods, risk awareness, and quality assurance, bridging the gap between innovation and responsibility. And finally, the new A4Q Certified Professional for AI Compliance, a specialized program focused on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. Here, you'll explore risk classification, governance, conformity assessment, and post-market monitoring, all the key elements organizations need to stay compliant in the new regulatory era. Explore the A4Q AI portfolio and take your next step toward AI you can trust.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Atafam Leshi, and I'm very happy to be your host for the second day of A4Q Testing Summit. Thank you all for joining us as we continue with another day full of discussions and practical experiences from the global testing community. Alongside the A4Q sessions, today we also continue with our German track, sponsored by German Testing Board, and also our French track, sponsored by CFTL. For this session, I am pleased to introduce Hingo Santos, Head of Quality Assurance with more than 18 years experience in software testing, automation, and DevOps. Hingo is also leading several AI-driven initiatives focused on improving modern testing practices. Hello, Hingo, and welcome.
Hello, Atif.
In today's presentation, he will explore practical ways teams can start using AI in testing activities without getting lost in technical complexity or hype, and making AI more accessible and useful for everyday testing work. I encourage you to stay engaged and share your feedback, comment, and questions via the chat or in the comment. Please do not forget to vote for Ingo if you like his presentation. Please join me in welcoming Ingo. Ingo, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Atif. Firstly, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So I'm here to talking about a little bit about AI and especially how we can simplify AI in tests. How we can observe from the last 2 days, if I'm not wrong, we started talking about AI. We saw how AI is increasing, especially on the testing area. But on the other hand, we can feel pressure because we have a lot of things happening at the same time. And that's the reason I created this presentation. The objective here is discuss about how we can adopt AI, considering the maturity of the testing team and not only the blueprint for testing, right? Because we receive a lot of information and then maybe we can fear how we can adopt it in our daily basis, and then we can feel that we are behind our colleagues, our companies, and other companies. So that's the reason I created this presentation. When we start talking about AI and how to implement AI in our testing area, we not started because you are ready. We started because we felt that we are left behind. So we are feeling the famous FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And then we start running and start to try to implement AI in our process. and then we learn a lot. And this is presentation, it's about this journey, how we learn and how we are using AI in our days. So basically, I will pass through four items. First one, I would like to simplify AI, right, and see how we can filter the information that you got from the market, from any social media, and then use AI and adopt it to our testing maturity levels. So we need to respect how our team is working with the level of the maturity in testing of each team and adapt the AI according to this maturity. And then I will bring you some examples about how we use what are the prompts that we are using, and especially where we should use in terms of maturity level. And then I ask for action, then I have some takeaways. So when we start to talking about implementing AI in our current process, we saw a lot of information. And we identified that the problem is not lack of options, but actually it's how we can start, where we can start using AI in our process. And then we face a lot of tool overloaded. We have a lot of information. We have a lot of providers asking and for our attention, and then offering a lot of UI tools, a lot of frameworks, a lot of prompts. But what we felt is they are very complex, especially for the starting points, because they are focused in the must-have solution, right? They're not considering our reality. They're not considering how our team is in terms of maturity. And that is one thing that we suffer a lot, especially at the beginning. And then, of course, we identify that, okay, I have a lot of solutions. I have solutions that allow me to create tests, automated tests from requirements. But the problem is I don't have requirements. So that's the chaos that we face when we start to searching for implemented AI in our process. Remember that we felt that we are behind, so we are trying to run, but we saw that we have a lot of solutions, a lot of options. Then we decide to have one step back, right? And then how can we get it started? Firstly, one step back, and then we understood what are the AIs available and what they can help us in our testing process, and what are the gaps, the limitations that we should consider before decide where we'd like to start. So we basically have here supervised learning, unsupervised learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, and generative AI. They are the AI types that we search. And then we identify how it works. We identify that supervised learning, they learn from data. And then the issue is we don't have too much data to get it to have analysis. The same applies for unsupervised. Deep learning is something that demands a lot of computational cost, so something that we skip it. And then we decide, of course, to start with the generative AI. And why we start to generative AI? Firstly, it's a practical entry point, right? We could start using AI with low initial friction because we can use without the need to create any AI tool. Another thing is we could use the artifacts that we already have as requirements, our applications, our bugs logs, the scenarios, the documentation. So we could use what we already have as our testing tools to using generative AI and then create more things that can be useful. And then, of course, how generative AI works, right? It's can reading, can creating something, can creating tests, can creating automation, can analyze our logs, can help us questioning, summarizing things. So that's the reason we decided to start with generative AI. However, it is not our final destination. We know that generative AI is just our practical entry point. However, as I mentioned in the previous slide, generative AI has some limitations. And the limitation of AI is related to the hallucination, right? Because if you analyze the generative AI and how it works, it's easier to identify that what generative AI is. I'm going to be frivolous, but generative AI is just organize zeros and ones, right? The user probabilistic analysis, and then he can organize the tokens, right? Token is a word, and in a digital word, it's zeros and ones. And then generative AI is analyzing see how this organization can fit better. And another thing that you need to make sure that it's in our radar, it's generative AI is always provide an answer. If it's correct or not, it will provide an answer to us. So I bring here one example, just a quick one, is related to a cat, right? When we have a cat and you're thinking about the actions that cat can do, we have high priority that the cat can eat, the cat can play, the cat can scratch, and then some particular reasons. Maybe when we're talking about we have a cartoon point of view, we can admit that the cat can drive something, but the probability that this can be true, it's very, very slow, but it exists. So depends how the generative AI is analyzing our information, the tool can assume that a cat can drive a car, and this is the right answer. So this is one thing that you need to be aware, right? Generative AI, you will use our tokens, we will validate and comparing what you have provided with what they have in their database and see what is the best match. It's all related to probabilistic analysis. And then we understood that we have an issue, not an issue, but a challenge to cover. And then we started working and trying and testing to see how we can avoid this hallucination. And we identify one process, we are following a methodology where we can create our prompts, and then the result, the output of this prompt, it's better than we used to have. Of course, that I'm showing here what we found out after a long period of testing. And if you search, there are a lot of prompt engineers methodologies, but this one is the one that is working for us. It's not the best. I don't know if it's the best or not, but it is the organization that is working for us. In your reality, of course, you need to test and see what is the best way to use LLM, and then find what is your best prompt. And why it's important to have the full prompt syntax, because you can reuse, right? Since you have the same approach from different teams, from different level of maturity, you can make sure that everybody's using the same structure and everybody can reuse what another team is doing. Of course, depends on our reality. We need to do some minor changes, but the default is there, right? You can reuse, you can share, and everything can use the LLM and try to improve its process. So what is the CORO prompt? Basically, we divide the prompt in 4 items: the context, where we explain where we are and what we would like to have and all the requirements; the objective, where we are clear and then ask it to a generative AI, what would you like from the tool? the requirements. This is the most important part where we try to provide the most important information related to what we have. Then you can avoid the hallucination. Actually, cannot avoid, you can mitigate, right? Because then so there are some answers that we still have an hallucination, and then you need to return and make our prompt better. And then the output, it's how we would like to see the results. So this is our prompt, and then again, it's something that we not at the beginning we start to use it, we try, and then we find out that this way of organize our prompt is better and it's working for us. The challenge is to find how is your prompt and how is the prompt that will fit in our needs. But this is one example, and if I can give you a short try, start with this one, and then see, adapt, add information, remove information. But it's one starting point. And okay, so we defined the AI that we use. We defined how we use the AI. But since you are talking about different things that work in different applications, you will have different levels of maturity tests in maturity tests, right? So this is another challenge, because one prompt that is we can use to evaluate the quality of our automation may not apply to a team that is running a manual test, right? They are in a low level of maturity. Their test process is a new team. They are creating manual tests. They don't have requirements. So I cannot use the same prompt for every team. And then we try to organize better to help us to identify where we can use AI and where and how we can get quick wins. So this is basically what we did. We divide the maturity of our testing process in 4 items. One is our initial level. That is when we are trying to create a test management process. So basically, we have manual tests, we have a lack of test management, we have a lack of defect management. So we are in the start point, right? And when we have this scenario, we found out that we can use AI to help us to improve our process. Again, AI here is not doing what we supposed to do, but to use AI to assisting us to accelerate our improvement and accelerate our process to make sure that we will achieve the next level of our maturity. So when we have the scenario where we are in the initial level, we found out that we can use AI to help us to analyze and structure a test, to review the requirements and see if this requirement has gaps, has ambiguities. So that is the main purpose and the main usage of AI in this phase. We also have AI to help us to generate test scenarios. But here, one thing that is important to mention, we never trust in AI 100%. You ask AI to provide it, to help us to create some scenarios, boundary scenarios, edge scenarios, but we always review it. And honestly speaking, it's not 100% done. We need to do our reviews and make sure that everything is fine. The next is improve our bugs reports. Anyway, there's a lot of ways to use when you have this level. On the next level, the basic level, we start talking about test automation. We start talking about, okay, I have my tests in a better situation. I can have a test management process, and then I'm starting to automate my tests. In this scenario, we can use AI coding to assisting as a generator of initial automated drafts. It's the same strategy that you apply to create tests, right? But here, it's to create the structure of automated tests. We can ask AI to refactor the tests that we already have, and may help us to identify flag test stabilization. And as soon as you have our test automated, and you feel that you are in a better situation, we can start talking about continuous testing. right? And then continuous testing, we are on a scenario that you are running a testing pipeline, you are review and release strategy. Maybe you can have a lack of data management. And for this level of maturity, we found out that AI can help us to analyze the pipeline failures, to help us and analyze the risk based for our regression. So we can pick up some particular tests to run our regression. We don't need to run our full regression every time. And then we also can ask AI to help us to create a synthetic data. And the last but not least is our top level of maturity. It's non-functional tests, right? And then when we're talking about non-functional tests, so I'm talking about performance tests, I'm talking about security tests, I'm talking about chaos tests. So then we find out that for this particular test, UI can help us to design some load scenarios tests, can help us to some validation, some security checklists, and also help us to identify and suggest some chaos testing. So this is how we organize our approach to use AI and how we identify that, how each team can start using AI. So we define our tool, we define how we will communicate with this tool, and now we identify where I should use and when I should use each kind of approach, each kind of item for it depends on our testing level maturity. And then, since we have the entry view, I would like to share with you 4 cases that we have, that I bring that we are using. 2 of them, we are using a chat-based UI. It means that you are opening the chat, any tool, right? It's not about tool, it's about how we have our process well prepared. So the first one, we are using the chat. And then for this particular case, the case 1 and 2, we identify that for chat, it's good to get a test analysis, scenario generation, risk assessment, requirement clarification, regression planning. And on the other hand, you have the EDE-based AI, right? That is the AI that we can use under our EDE that can help us to analyze our code. So for these 2 items, for these 2 items, we have the same approach, but we are using different scenarios. So that's the idea. And then for the last 2 cases, the idea is show you how we can use the EDE assistant that can help us to review a code, to analyze our architecture, to analyze the failure that you got from our automated tests, try to help us to analyze the root cause of these fails, and then provide us some frameworks improvements. So again, we are using the same methodology, but you are interacting with the generative AI in 2 different ways. So the first case, it's a basic, is to identify ambiguities and generate questions, right? So the idea here is I have a requirement, I would like to review this requirement, and then I can see if the requirement is good, or if there is some questions that I need to raise to BA or for the responsible for the requirements. And in this scenario, EA can help us to identify misinformation, detecting ambiguous behavior, generate clarification questions, highlight some assumptions, and support stakeholder conversation, right? So this is at the beginning of the process. We can use AI to help us to identify the requirement and provide us some background where we can discuss. And the one thing that I'm highlight here is related to the requirements. So the objective of these 2 items that I highlighted is avoid hallucination. So I'm clear with the prompt that I don't wanna have any business rules invented by the tool, and also I'm guaranteed that the tool will not assume any expected behavior that's not clear on the requirement. I will share this presentation, so I'll not go to the entry prompt, but basically the idea is the context. I will say that I'm a QA, and then I copy the requirements or the user store or the synthesis criteria, anything that I would like to analyze. Then I'm clear in the objective. I would like to analyze and provide me some information, some questions that could be useful. I explain about the requirements, what I expected and what I don't expect it to have in the output, right? And the output is exactly how I would like to see the information. So this is my first use case. And then we are using a lot. And again, it's amazing, right? If you are using UI in this certain way, we can have a lot of improvements in our process. It's not the AI is not doing our work, but it helps us to save a lot of our time. The second case, it's related to the test case generation. Again, I not 100% agree with what the tool will provide as output, but I use this generation of test case to evaluate if I miss any scenario or not. Or on the other hand, you can start as our start point. Right, I'm starting thinking about what scenarios that I'd like to create based on a particular requirement. I ask generative AI to propose, then I review, and then I do my changes. And again, here I'm highlighting the requirements to avoid hallucination, right? So again, I ask you to not invent any business rules. And then I ask you to provide acceptance criteria as the main source of truth, right? So I'm focus the AI to use only the information that I'm provide to get the results. There is no assumptions. There is nothing, another information that's not provided by my prompt. And here the methodology is the same. I'm saying that I'm a QA. I'm providing all the information about my tests, the requirements, acceptance criteria, or any kind of information that's going to be useful. I'm clear the objective, what I expect from the tool. I'm clear about the requirements, what I want and what I don't want. And then the output, I ask it to provide a report. How would you like to have this report? What information that you'd like to have this report? So this is how we are using in our second case, generated case, right? Generated test case. The third is I'm not using the prompt anymore. I'm using the AI embedded in the EDE. So here, how the AI can help me identify some automation anti-patterns, detect duplicated code, so I can reduce the number of lines of my code, can validate the automation best practices. So I'm using the AI to review my code to make sure that I'm following the best practices in the test automation. So that's the idea for this prompt. I know that there are a lot of information, and I honestly speaking, I didn't bring you all the requirements that I would like to bring because it doesn't fit on the one slide. But here, my objective is bring the idea, right? You need to identify in your reality how you can use it. But here, the idea is I have a file under my project, and I have defined a profile, right? For each prompt, I have different profiles. Each profiles means that I have a specialist attached to my project. For this particular case, the specialist is the architecture. So the idea of this prompt is having the AI to help me identify if I'm using the best architecture, if there is any improvement, if there is anything that it can changing my code, this profile will do it. And since it's a EDA, since it's a solution that is embedded in the AI, I just need to open the prompt command and ask the AI to follow the rules that I wrote in this particular file. And then the magic happens. The last scenario, it's for root cause, right? Because you know that we have a lot of logs fail, especially when we're running automated tests, we have some fails, and we spend a lot of time analyzing the logs. And then the idea of this prompt is I have a specialist that can analyze the logs and then summarize the information to me and try to identify if there is any common errors, if there is some flaky errors, if there are some errors that are related to the application, so it's a real bug, or if there is an error that's related to my script that I need to maintain. So this is the objective of this second example, to analyze my logs and see if I have opportunity to save my time and I don't need to analyze log one by one. The objective here is summarize and bring me the outcomes and what is important to see. So for this specific case, what I expected from UI is analyze the issues, right? What is automation issue and what is the product issue? See if I have common issues, reduce my triage effort, right? It saves a lot of my time. I don't need to read all the logs. I just get the reports that is provided by the AI, and that's it. My life is safe, and I save a lot of time. Okay, so this is my presentation and my suggestion, right? What's my key takeaways? If you'd like to start using AI or you are not comfortable with how you are using AI in your reality, my key takeaways is based in 5 steps. 1, start simple, right? This is the first item, right? Start. And when you start simple, try, see if it happens. If the expected result is what you expected, if not, try again. Respect your maturity. If you don't have the certain level of maturity to have automation ready or to analyze logs, forget about it. Start with the simple. Start using the UI as you need. Forget about the pressure. Forget about the feeling that you are behind. Using smoothly. And starting using, right? Using GenAI practically. So using, try, learn, define your methodology, define your frameworks, structure your prompts, right? Since you have the practical, you start to learn and then you start to find how you can communicate with the tool better. Remind to keep humans in control, right? The outputs are good, but they need to review. We need to review. It's important to have some humans in control and go step by step, right? Start small, validate it. If it works, progress. If not, come back, try again, and see if the result is correct or not. Another thing that I'd like to share with you is a tool. So do you remember that we discussed about the 4 levels of maturity, of testing? And then here we have a quick checklist to help you identify where you can start using AI in your current process. So it's just yes, no questions. If it's no, you have a suggested approach. If yes, move on, go to the next, and see where you can find a better approach to use AI. But if you still have questions, because this checklist works well for me, for my reality, but if your reality is not good and you are still have doubts about how to use AI in a better way, how to identify the key queens, you can use the AI or not. You can use the AI and share with AI what is your process, how you test in your company, and ask AI to propose to you some quick wins, right? And based on the answer for UI, maybe we can understand better how we can use UI in our daily basis. So this is one thing that we use it a lot. When you don't know exactly what to do, we ask AI. We ask questions to AI. Okay, even for the prompts, if I'd like to create a prompt to analyze a specific log, I can ask AI to help me to create the structure of this prompt. Why not? And then one thing just to highlight, and I highlight here, AI never assume anything, and in case that the AI has any question, something that is not clear, ask me. So then I can start interacting with AI, then I can have the answers that I want. So guys, this is my presentation. I don't know if there is any question, if there is anything that I can try to help. If I'm not able to answer now, I answer later. So please let me know if there is any question or something that I can try to help.
Thank you very much, Ingo, for this insightful presentation and practical advices to make AI more simple to use in everyday testing work. Now, I can see we have some question. I would like to, yeah. How do you prevent hallucination when AI generated test scenarios?
Okay, this is a good question, right? And this is the main concern when I talk about generative AI. I would say, firstly, we need to remember that we need to make clear that the constraint is the most important thing that you need to share with the tool, right? You need to share exactly what we expect, but most importantly is what we don't expect. Yeah. And secondly, explicitly the defining restrictions, right? For instance, you, as I show in my presentation, do not invent business rules. So the AI, you understand what you expected and what you don't expect. Again, it's all about constraint. And third, but not least, is validate the outputs, right? Exactly as you validate any engineering artifact. As I mentioned, the AI can create some useful outputs, but we, as a human being, need to validate because there are the risk of has hallucination, and the human is the best tool to prevent it.
Yes, validation is very important point. Uh, we have more question? I'm asking my colleague. Yeah. Do you believe AI will reduce the need for testers?
This is the classical question, is a good one as well. And in my point of view, I see a shift in focus rather than replacement, right?
Mhm.
So the repetitive activities can become automated, and then there will be a great demand for people who understand risks, business context, and quality strategies. So what we have is a shift of the market expected from the tester, but I cannot see that we will be replaced for any kind of tool.
I see. Thank you. How do you prevent persistent AI specialists inside the IDE from becoming giant prompts that are difficult to maintain?
Oh, this is a good one. And honestly speaking, this is one issue that we found on the beginning of the usage. And then we realized that we need to use and the IDE, right? The prompt, we need to manage in the same way that we manage code. We need to use modularization. We need to create our versions. And of course, we need to make sure that it can be reused. Large prompt without any maintenance eventually can become a technical debt. So prompt engineering also requires engineering discipline, something that we need to make sure that we are doing the same management that we are doing with our code.
Thank you, Ingo.
Thank you.
Quick reminder, if you enjoyed Ingo's presentation, don't forget to scan the QR code and vote for Ingo. You can also vote for him through his page at our website. If you missed any presentation or if you want to rewatch this presentation, please, the presentations are accessible via our website or our YouTube channel. Thank you everyone for joining us and enjoy the rest of A4Q Testing Summit. Thank you, Ingo, again.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everybody.
The A4Q AI portfolio brings together 3 certifications, each designed to strengthen your understanding of AI from a different perspective. You can start with A4Q AI Essentials to gain a clear understanding of how AI works and how to apply it ethically and effectively. Explore A4Q AI Foundation to deepen your knowledge of AI methods, risk awareness, and quality assurance, bridging the gap between innovation and responsibility. And finally, the new A4Q Certified Professional for AI Compliance, a specialized program focused on the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. Here, you'll explore risk classification, governance, conformity assessment, and post-market monitoring, all the key elements organizations need to stay compliant in the new regulatory era. Explore the A4Q AI portfolio and take your next step toward AI you can trust.